We also know that the FBI was created on who? The Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. J. Edgar Hoover's first full-time job with the FBI was to do what? Bring down greatest leader of the 19th century, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So COINTELPRO is still here. It's in the form of the disruptive behavior disorders, engineered by the government, the FBI, and who's the third factor? The drug companies. One thing you got to understand about psychology, it's no longer a true science. Psychology has become psychoeconomics. The makers of Ritalin and Strattera and Prozac and Cycler, and the list goes on, the makers of these major black psychotropic drugs are the number one financiers of the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the National Institute of Mental Health. What I'm trying to get you to understand is much of the diagnoses, much of the disruptive behavior diagnoses that we use on black children were paid for by the drug companies. The drug exists before the diagnosis. You need to understand this. The drug exists before the diagnosis. The diagnosis is created to feed the prescription. The diagnosis is created to feed the description. To give you a quick point in what I mean, I think I have with me a copy of the DSM-4, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. You should have a copy of this. Buy one if you don't. You need it if you're a parent, if you work with children. This is the Bible of psychology and psychiatry. Anything we diagnose comes out of this book. The DSM-4 TR, text revision, is silver with blue letters. The interesting thing about this book is on the back cover, there's a picture. It says American Psychiatric Association, 1844, with a picture of Benjamin Rush. Benjamin Rush was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He was also dean of the medical school at Pennsylvania Hospital. But more importantly, he was a psychiatrist who used to diagnose enslaved Africans with a mental disorder, okay, called nigritude. Nigritude was a mental disorder that rendered the brain of the African totally unusable. You was an imbecile. The chief symptom of nigritude, according to Benjamin Rush, was the turning of the skin black. He was actually the father of American segregation because he said that blacks had to be separated from whites because if whites rubbed up against black skin, they would catch nigritude and thusly their brains would be useless. His picture is not on there by accident. But I want to flip to ADHD real quick to give you a quick point in what I'm talking about as it relates to. Okay. This is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I'm going to give you some of the chief symptoms. Listen to this. Often fails to give close attention to details. Is careless in schoolwork. Has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Often does not follow through on instructions or fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. Often has difficulty organizing tasks and activities. Often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort, such as schoolwork or homework. Often loses things necessary for tasks or activities. Is often easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. Is often forgetful in daily activities. Who in here does this not describe once in a while? Do you see what I'm talking about? I want you to understand why so many of our boys are being diagnosed with this made-up disorder that they don't even have. Because the criteria are so general that any human being on any day of the week can get the diagnosis. Now, trivia question of the day. There used to be something called attention deficit disorder in this book. It was taken out. And now it's only ADHD, primarily hyperactive, or primarily inattentive, or combined. My question to you is, why did they take ADD out? Before there was an ADD and a separate ADHD. There is no more ADD. Anybody who's still walking around with that disorder had it for about 10 years. You follow me? Now my question to you is, why did they drop ADD and make everybody ADHD primarily hyper, primarily inattentive, or combined? Why did they get rid of ADD? Anybody want to take a crack? Yes, sir.
Because like you said, we all carry them traits, so they had to get rid of the whole spectrum.
True, it was very ambiguous, but the main reason is because there is no drug that can make you pay attention. So when a child gets diagnosed with ADD, it don't lead to a prescription because no drug can make you pay attention. Do you follow me? They can only give a drug to do what? Slow down your central nervous system so you can sit still in the classroom long enough to be miseducated. But no drug can make you pay attention. So they got rid of ADD. Now any child who gets the diagnosis is either primarily hyper, primarily inattentive, but since it's all ADHD now, everybody can get hooked on crack. And the Ritalin is the chemical equivalent of speed. Did you know that? The same illegal drug speed that could put a black man in jail for 10 years, you can give it to a black boy and nothing happens to you. In 1960, the United States government put together a committee to study the long-term effects of psychotropic drugs on the black community. And they found that it would be very, very beneficial to do so. So in our community today, most of us are hooked on some form of a drug. If it ain't psychotropic, it's cancer medicine, heart medicine, diabetes medicine. You'd be hard-pressed to find a person in the black community who isn't on some form of a drug or another. Important to understand. But 70% of all black boys diagnosed with ADHD don't have an active father figure in their life. Since the beginning of time, you know that when you don't get the attention from your father at home, you go to school looking for it. That's been around forever. But 30 years ago, it wasn't ADHD. But now you have people getting paid off black parents' inability to raise them sons in the absence of the father from the home. Most of them don't need nothing but a man in their life. When I was growing up, I was never allowed to be ADHD because my father wouldn't allow it. I was never allowed to be conduct disorder because my father wouldn't allow it. I was never allowed to have oppositional defiant disorder because my father wouldn't allow it. You understand? Most of these diagnoses come from poor discipline. How do you differentiate between the three? ADHD, conduct disorder, ODD. Conduct disorder is physical acting out. Okay, a child with conduct disorder hits and they abuse other kids. Again, lack of discipline, not a real disorder. Oppositional defiant is a mouthy child. You ask them to do something? No. Go to school? No. Do your work? No. But an ODD kid does not physically attack. Conduct kid physically attacks. And of course, ADHD is supposed to be a what? Brain-based neurological problem, right? But when's the last boy you see diagnosed with ADHD was given an MRI or a CAT scan? It doesn't happen. Most black kids who get diagnosed with ADHD get diagnosed off of the referral from the teacher and the parent, and that's it. Okay? Social engineering. First, we got to start with the definition. What is engineering? The planning of bringing about something, especially when done with ingenuity or what? Secretiveness. This is the dictionary definition. An engineer. A planning of bringing about of something, especially when done with ingenuity or secretiveness. What is genocide? Definition from the dictionary: the systematic killing of all the people from a national, ethnic, religious group or an attempt to do this. Why did I underline all? The reason why I underline all is because there are a lot of Africans, not just in America, but all around the world, who think that if they dress a certain way, or talk a certain way, or live a certain way, or drive a certain way, or marry a certain way, that somehow the dominant structure of this society will forget that they're Africans. And anybody who believes such a thing doesn't totally understand white supremacy and how it operates. You can never be on the in-group, President Obama included. I predict right here in front of you that when he's no longer president, you're going to see a whole slew of negative information about that man come out. Why? Because it is the arrogance of white supremacy that cannot tolerate any black person who thinks that you've been accepted by the in-group. It cannot happen. Look at O.J. Simpson. He thought he was on the in-group. Deadly sin number one. Let's talk about abortion. This is a quote. Several years ago, 17,000 aborted black babies were found in a dumpster outside a pathology laboratory in Los Angeles. 12 to 15,000 were observed to be black. Did you know that? 17,000 aborted babies in LA. What it's not telling you is that the dumpster where these 17,000 black aborted babies were found was right near a United States government testing laboratory. The United States still has not ratified the 1948 United Nations Genocide Conventions, which made crime of genocide an international crime.